All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to talk Vikings-Bengals, Jets-Dolphins, and Cowboys-Bills. Three excellent games in their own right, compelling in their own right. Let's start in Cincinnati. Bengals are 3.5-point favorites over Minnesota. Total is 39. At the time we're recording, still don't know who the quarterback of the Vikings will be. I'm expecting it'll probably be Nick Mullins. You don't typically flirt with benching your quarterback, go with the same guy, then bench him mid-game, and then the backup comes in and leads the winning drive. So what are you expecting from this game, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, what a performance from Nick Mullins.
Wasn't great.
3-0 over the mighty Raiders. No, the question, this handicap starts and ends with trying to dissect what to expect out of Mr. Jake Browning. There are a lot of Purdy 2022 whiffs about Jake Browning, Jay. He is a guy that is dedicated to improving his craft. He has put a performance on tape now 2 weeks in a row, albeit against fraudulent defenses that have been among the best in football. He is operating with a healthy and very, very, very dynamic supporting cast. The kind of small things that kind of at times made it a little bit clunky for the Cincinnati offense to succeed don't really feel like things with Jake Browning the way they felt like with Joe Burrow, like namely, waiting for time, really just elongating his time in the pocket to the tune of taking extra sacks, things like that really just haven't been factors for Browning, which is incredible. A hat tip to Zach Taylor for adjusting the scheme in a way that kind of utilizes his strengths and kind of does make things a bit easier for him. But this is now a relatively step up in class in terms of test, going from, kind of hanging impressive victories against somewhat fraudulent defenses for the Jags and the Colts to now taking on a Vikings defense that many people didn't think was going to be as good as they have been this year, but does have sort of the fastball of kind of bringing pressure and really kind of, just in general, making life uncomfortable for the quarterback. That does have the potential to truly test Mr. Browning. I think Browning can pass this test personally. I think the handful of throws he made, particularly in the Jaguars game, where the Jaguars pinned their ears back and said, "We got to go get this guy. We got to end this drive here and now." And then he delivered, surgical strikes to Jamar Chase down the field, or getting T. Higgins down the field against the Colts. Like, he can make those throws, and so I don't actually have much of a doubt here that the Bengals are going to be able to move the ball and score points against the Vikings defense that doesn't match up especially well against Chase and Higgins, if we're being honest. And then the flip side of the coin is Nick Mullins going to be able to go score and answer against the Bengals defense that's been a massive disappointment this season? And I don't think he can. I'm not a Nick Mullins guy. I don't know that you're going to have a fully healthy set of weapons here for the Vikings. I'm going to go ahead and assume that Justin Jefferson's not going to play. I'm going to assume that if he does play, he's going to be largely a decoy, because that was a serious injury he sustained last week. And this is a guy that is still coming back from a relatively long layoff. And to expect him to be the game-breaking, dynamic Justin Jefferson we know, I think is asking too much at this point. So realistically, I think that this is a decent opportunity for the Bengals to continue to stack wins. The Bengals may be able to sprint into the finish here and not only play spoiler to teams that have aspirations for winning divisions and having home playoff games, but the Bengals may very well get in as a wild card themselves on the back of this performance. And I don't know exactly how you grade the Bengals offense right now, but considering the fact that the offensive line is playing well, that they have now developed kind of an off-speed to the good pitch in Brown at running back, I think you have an offense that should be rated as top 10 in the NFL that is being commanded by Jake Browning. And is this a commentary on the sad state of affairs of quarterbacks across the NFL, or is this a pleasant surprise that Jake Browning can do this? I think it's a little bit of both. But I think the Bengals are the side here. And just in general, I'm prepared to be disappointed that Jake Browning turns into a pumpkin under pressure against this Vikings defense, but I think the growth that you've already seen from him from the Steelers game to what he did in the second half against the Colts is enough for me to believe that this Bengals team is going to be able to get a win against the Vikings. And my fair rating for Bengals offensive output in this game is 24 points, and I think that's going to be enough to cover 3.5.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with Jake Browning. So a couple of things. One, his average depth of target is 5.6 yards, which is the lowest in the NFL by far. out of what the way I was sorting it, there were 42 qualifiers. He was 42nd with 5.6, and 41st was Dorian Thompson-Robinson at 6.4. So he's just throwing it barely past the line of scrimmage. In terms of his air EPA in his 3 starts, he's gone negative 5.3, plus 2.3, negative 1.1. So it is all yak with Jake Browning. And now I don't think that undermines what he's been able to do, because he's been extremely efficient doing so, and his completion percentage over expected has been excellent. And the Colts, they kind of almost, Gus Bradley in a way acknowledged that they kind of screwed up the game plan against the Bengals, where they were so worried about Chase deep against their corners, like a rookie 7th rounder and an undrafted guy in Darrell Taylor, that they just got eviscerated on screens. And so that was there. And that's why his air EPA was low. His average depth of target was low. At the same time, he was so bad against the Steelers. And the 2 games that he's excelled in are against 2 defenses that I think are pretty subpar. So I don't really know what to make of this guy. I would lean that he is certainly going to be better than Nick Mullins, and that he's probably a better quarterback than the guy he just beat in Gardner Minshew. And he certainly looks the part. Like, he is decisive, and his receivers get separation so quickly, and then he just throws it to them. Like, there is no hanging around in the pocket, Superman type of plays. He seems to have good awareness and everything. But I mean, I'm interested to see how he goes against a Vikings defense that I don't really understand how they're doing it, but they are 6th in EPA on the season in terms of drop back EPA. Overall, they are the number 5 defense. I think Brian Flores is probably the best defensive coordinator in football. And if anyone was ever going to solve Jake Browning, and it's incredible that, 3 weeks ago, we're talking about how do you solve Jake Browning, but you would think that Brian Flores would be the guy to do it. And then on the other side, like, I watched an ungodly amount of Vikings Raiders, and Nick Mullins was not great. His first 2 passes that he threw arguably should have been picked off, but he throws in rhythm. Like, he just drop back and let it rip. And it can go anywhere, but he makes some nice throws. He made some terrible throws. Whereas Dobbs, he just hangs around, and then doesn't feel the pressure. And I think Kevin O'Connell was just like, this is 2 games in a row of this. He was kind of doing the same thing against Atlanta and New Orleans and Denver, and largely got away with it. So there's a lot happening in this game. I agree. I just don't think Nick Mullins is very good. I think Jefferson, I don't understand what's going on with these injuries in the NFL. I don't understand what happened to Tyreek Hill on Monday night. I don't understand how Justin Jefferson goes to the hospital and now is day-to-day, where that injury mechanic, like, surely it's a fractured rib, or it's not a fractured rib. I don't, like, what's going on. But anyway, he certainly looked super explosive getting open before he got viciously hit. But I don't know what we're going to get out of him. So there are lots of unknowns. I think the Bengals defense is still terrible, but I agree with you that I think that the Bengals are probably the side, just because there is a lot more confidence in the quarterback there than Minnesota's side.
Yeah, so I guess maybe the key question then is, do you expect some tendency breakers from the Vikings, or is this just going to be standard old, let's put some pressure on them via blitz? Because if that's the case, you already have kind of the answers if you're the Bengals offense, getting the ball out of his hand relatively quickly with the short stuff. And in fact, the weirdest part about the Jake Browning emergence, I guess, or just the 2 weeks of success that he's had, the screen game for the Bengals has been unstoppable. You know what, though? Like, the automatic, like, why are you doing this, as you were watching Bengals film the last couple of years, was the screen passes. Like, they were dead on arrival. And now all of a sudden, for some reason, they're super effective. If that's a reflection of, the defense in the way that the Colts and the Jags were schemed, and just in particular, the ability to use misdirection to kind of free some of those young linebackers, maybe that was the factor there. But I'm kind of cautiously optimistic that the Bengals can get another win here, and I'm kind of prepared for the world's brain to be somewhat broken that Jake Browning might be good.
It's certainly possible. If the Bengals win this game and they go to 8-6, and then after that their schedule goes, at Mitch Trubisky, most likely. I don't think Pickett's going to be back by then. At Kansas City, that's very difficult. And then home, Cleveland. Do you think if Zach Taylor closes the season 6-0 with Jake Browning to get to 11-6 and lock up a 5 seed, that he would win Coach of the Year at that point?
Well, I think he should. I mean, the idea of the Bengals getting there with what has happened at the quarterback position should put Zach Taylor in rare air among coaches. And I mean, my personal feelings about him and how to rate him and how to characterize his coaching has completely changed. Seeing him change the offense to adapt to an injured Joe Burrow this year, change the offense to adapt away from the 11 personnel predictable stuff they were running, and now bringing some credit to Callahan as well, obviously the offensive coordinator, for bringing Browning along here. But this has been masterfully done by them. And if they can, if they go 6-0, if they beat the Chiefs, even like that's probably enough to warrant sincere consideration for the award. But the state of the coaching of the year market, how many coaches are live right now? Like 12?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, there are not many guys you can put a line through, given that the super high ceiling cases that Dan Campbell, D'Amico Ryans, and Shane Steichen were working on, they all still exist. But now it's like those guys have to win out to get to their really high end ceiling, whereas they all had a loss to play with, and they all used up that loss on the weekends. We'll get to that market in more depth, but I make the Bengals 20-1 to run the slate. And a lot of that is just the fact that they're going to be sizable underdogs in Kansas City in a game that Kansas City are going to need. But I mean, if they get that, and that's a somewhat winnable game now, the way KC are playing, I don't think ultimately that Taylor would win, but it's certainly a case that could win. And I think is much more compelling to me than like the Sean Payton momentum, where if Zach Taylor goes 11-6 and 6-0 with Jake Browning, that's better than anything Sean Payton can do. I don't think he's going to win either, but Taylor would certainly get in the mix. All right, before we get to the man who was the favorite in the Coach of the Year market before a catastrophe happened in South Florida this holiday season, Drew, get the Fantasy Fan in your life, the exclusive RotoWorld Draft Guide bundle, featuring expert analytics, player insights, and season-long tools. Get all 3 of the draft guides for one low price. Go to NBCsports.com/holiday bundle and use code HOLIDAY23 at checkout to receive 25% off and a $10 Fanatics gift card. All right. Dolphins, 9-point favorites, home to the Jets. Total is 39.5. Right team favored in this one, Drew? No, the right team is favored in this one. But could this line get closer to a touchdown?
I would say so. We were spitballing what fair price was yesterday. I don't think it was off the air. And I was kind of in like the 7.5, 8 range. And that was with expecting a healthy center for the Dolphins. Dolphins sustained some meaningful injuries and now on a short week have to get right in a matchup that all of a sudden looks very, very, very tricky for them. The old kind of expectation of what you were going to get from the Jets offense is a little bit, kind of thrown into the air now that Zach Wilson is playing with nothing to lose. I actually do think that is a real angle. Like pretty clearly Wilson was in his own head for a lot of his time as a starter this season. And it was also very obvious in the second half of that Jets game that he was basically like, okay, well, this is, I might as well just, kind of play a little backyard ball here. And it was a much different experience. And I think the Dolphins, now having lost meaningful pieces of their pass rush and Jalen Phillips and at the linebacker level with Baker, combined with the fact that Xavier Howard got dinged up in the last game and that you just in general, aren't coming in at full strength on the defense, does give the Jets a little bit of scope here to put some points on the board. Surely Breece Hall is not anywhere near as effective as he was last season, largely because the Jets offensive line has been an absolute train wreck. Although it is worth noting the Jets offensive line at least has a little bit of continuity over the last 6 weeks relative to the beginning of the season where it was a new guy every single week being asked to do something new. The continuity at this time of year for an offensive line is hugely important. And so there is potential that the Jets can finally get a little bit of a run block going. They can finally get some pass protection going and have a little bit of success on offense. When you flip the coin, this is a humongous step up for the Dolphins offense against the Jets defense. Jets defense clearly a top 3 unit in the NFL. I don't think there's really any argument arguing with that. They have exactly the right pieces to make things a little bit difficult for you in terms of pass defense against your elite weapons. Your elite weapons both came out of the game at times dealing with injuries and now have to get right on a 6-day week. So this is a very, very potential problematic spot for the Dolphins. The Mike McDaniel, catastrophic, outcome of that game against the Titans is 100% fair characterization. And in fact, he made some weird coaching decision mistakes in that game. And just in general, I think anytime a team lets up a 14-point lead with 3 minutes to play, the coach absolutely has to come under scrutiny. So it's going to be fascinating to see how he deals with the kind of renewed attention to what happened with that blown loss. And I think ultimately the Tua kind of sliding back into sort of the guy that we remember from exactly a year ago, who was just not playing anywhere close to what we saw in the early fall, is something to keep an eye on. I was not impressed with Tua really last night, and the fact that they lose their center, who was excellent, and they have, and Tua has been kind of notoriously susceptible to interior pass rush, and you're going up against Quinnen Williams, who might be interior DL number 2 after Aaron Donald in the NFL in terms of talent. Like, this smells like trouble every which way you want to slice it. And I know they still have, one of the most dynamic set of weapons in the game in Miami, and that might ultimately be the difference here. But seeing this open at double digits didn't feel right. Seeing it at 9 now still feels like there's meat on the bone, and I think Jets realistically have a decent shot to kind of pull off the impossible here if their defense plays as well as they did last week, surely.
Yep, I certainly agree. I think the Jets will be the side at +9. I just don't think that the Dolphins have much avenue to playing well on offense, and now they got it done to an extent when they played in East Rutherford a few weeks ago against the Jets, but that wasn't pretty either. And Tua threw the 2 inexplicable picks, and the offense didn't look like the all-world unit that it had been. I think this Jets defense is just too good. Like, no one plays well against the Jets defense. The only quarterback who has had a good game against the Jets, you can include Josh Allen the second time if you want, but that was kind of a weird 80-yard catch and run that basically saved his numbers. The only guy who played well was Dak Prescott, and Dak Prescott threw a 100th percentile easy pick 6 to Sauce Gardner, just went through his hands back in week 2. So basically no one has good games against the Jets. And now, to your point about Connor Williams, who I think PFF rated as the best center in football, the Dolphins are now down 80% of their offensive line. And Armstead and Hunt have been week to week. Not sure if they are going to come back. I'm not sure if Tyreek Hill is going to play. I'd expect he would. I have no idea what happened to Tyreek last night. I don't understand how it's possible to have an ankle injury that is significant enough to keep you out of the game for as long as it did for him. But for him to just sprint off the field right after the injury, and then when he comes in, he looks exactly the same guy. I think it was concerning that the Dolphins needed a pick 6 from Will Levis, a fumbled punt at the 4-yard line, and then a comical toss fumble. They needed all of that to get to 27. They did nothing on offense, really. And that's the big concern, is that against the Titans secondary that is, frankly terrible, and is running out rookie corners to defend guys like Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill for the time that he was out there. And Tua was negative 0.13 EPA per play at home against the Titans secondary. And I get that some of that is the pass rush, but if you want to build the idea that Tua is very much a product of his surroundings, and when the surroundings start to collapse in on him, that he doesn't have the ability to overcome it. I mean, last night would be that would be data point 1 for that. So it's a little concerning that on the 2 biggest plays of Tua's season, 4th down against the Chiefs, 4th down against the Titans, he fell over. Just both times, he just fell over. To be fair, there was a snap in the Chiefs game, but it wasn't a glorious end to either game. And look, most great quarterbacks, they need their weapons to be fully operational. And I think Tua is a top 10 quarterback in the league. But if he doesn't have 80% of his offensive line and a healthy Tyreek Hill, then I'm not sure he's going to be able to overcome that, particularly against the Jets defense. By the way, if the Dolphins, if they lose this game, they can miss the playoffs. Like
Yes.
they were in the box seat for the 1 seed going into last night. They closed the season. Dallas, Baltimore, and Buffalo, and so those three are all losable games. If their health situation doesn't get better, they are probably going to be dogs in all three of those games. So this is season on the line stuff against the Jets. And I think they will win because I don't trust Zach Wilson going up against a better defense than Houston's. But I think this closes more like 7.5.
Yep.
And I think the Jets are the side.
Yeah, I think if this wasn't the Jets defense you were up against, I would probably be willing to chalk up yesterday as, hey, everybody has a stinker. You can't win. You can't go out there and be your best self 17 times. It's very, very hard. The normal distribution of just player level outcomes would tell you you're going to have 3 of these games that you're just not going to be your best. And I would be fine chalking that up to that's what we saw yesterday, even though, yes, that came against a very weak defense. That's problematic. If it was anyone but the Jets, I would maybe feel like bounce back was potentially going to happen, but against the Jets, this is just, there's no margin for error. You really, really have to be perfect against these guys in order to move the ball effectively. And the Jets aren't going to turn you over, but boy, oh boy, are they effective at preventing the explosive plays and just in general playing, a complete game of defense. So, I think what we're looking at here now, all of a sudden with that loss yesterday, is this game probably decides whether the Dolphins are in the playoffs or not, because I think they lose out if they lose this game. And I think ultimately, even that loss yesterday, in the grand scheme of things, that gives the Bills all of a sudden margin for error. Like the Bills-Cowboys game was a elimination game for the Bills if the Dolphins win, because they needed to win every single game going forward, and they were going to be able to compete in Week 18 for the AFC East. Probably. Now, with this loss in pocket for the Dolphins, the Bills have the potential to lose another game, and it's still not going to really cost them. Bills get Chargers and Patriots, which are pretty straightforward wins, while the Dolphins play the Cowboys and the Ravens. So not looking pretty for Miami right now. And, the fact that Tua's bad games came in a cluster last year is in the back of my head, if we're being honest.
Yep, no, certainly. I was thinking as soon as Miami lost that game, I started thinking about Josh Allen MVP, because he has a path to win the division and be a 3 seed while having, stats that'll be probably finish in the. I mean, if he wins the division, presumably he's playing well on the way and upping his stats to be. No one's going to catch Purdy, but he might be able to catch Dak for number 2 in terms of statistics. And everyone is good with Josh Allen being the MVP, and much more so than Purdy or Dak in terms of his reputation. But you just look at the mechanics of the schedule and the fact that San Francisco play Baltimore and someone has to win that game. And then Dallas plays Miami and someone has to win that game. And like either outcome is bad for Allen in a different way. So I don't think he really has any path, but it's an interesting one to play around with.
Yeah, I think he also probably finishes close to 20 picks, which isn't.
That's the other thing. Yeah, which voters do not like. He's at 14 now. If he throws 1 pick the rest of the way, maybe he'd have the statistical profile, but he maxes out at 11-6, and he's going to be up against competition that's either a 1 seed in Lamar Jackson or 14-3 Brock Purdy, 13-4 Dak Prescott, whatever. So I don't think he has an actual path, barring really strange stuff starting to happen. Also, Mike McDaniel, Coach of the Year, quickly before we move on. A lot of dirt being poured on McDaniel, and obviously he drifts significantly after last night. At the same time, I still make it 10-1 that they run the slate, and because 2 of their difficult games, they are at home in Miami. They will get healthier, presumably. Armstead, Hunt come back. Tyreek gets healthier. They can just get through this game against the Jets, where they are 9-point favorites, so they should be able to get through it. Then all of a sudden, if they win home Dallas, at Baltimore will be on a short week coming off what will presumably be a brutal game against San Francisco, and then home Buffalo. All of a sudden, like that one secures the 1 seed for Miami, secures all the vibes. No one remembers the Titans game if they run the slate from here. It's just, that's not an automatic win. and it's 10-1 to even get to that point. So he's in a lot of trouble, and I don't think he's going to win Coach of the Year, but I wouldn't completely put a line through him.
We agree on that. And to go back a tiny step to your Josh Allen point, if you want equity in a long shot MVP right now and you think Allen's the guy, you're almost better off just parlaying Buffalo Bills win with the Cardinals winning, because that's kind of what you need to get to knock Purdy out of the top spot right now, in my opinion. He needs to lose some freaky weird ones to bring the win-loss closer to Buffalo landing 11-6. So there are more creative ways, I think, to try to capitalize on those opinions. And in fact, just lay the points with Buffalo and be happy about it, I think.
Yeah, well, yeah, because he's done. If they lose to Dallas, completely put a fork in him. I think the best way to bet the Bills right now is to win the AFC. If you can find some 10-1, 11-1, I think that is slightly good. All right, before we get to those Buffalo Bills, a reminder this Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, Drew, Vaughn Dalzell, Brad Thomas, and Eric Froton are answering your college football betting questions for bowl season. They'll discuss which games they've circled, handicap the college football playoffs, as well as get you ready for 7 matchups on Saturday. So go check them out on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. All right, Cowboys at Bills. Another big one. It feels like the Bills, they play in all these big cinematic late Sunday afternoon games every single week, and they usually end in tears for Buffalo until last week. Where they reverse the juju. Now they are 2.5-point favorites. The total is 50.5. Line is trending back towards Dallas at some spots a little bit. The Bills, their injury situation isn't amazing on defense. Micah Hyde is week to week. So Tick, DeMar Hamlin should be active again if Hyde is out. AJ Epinesa, who's quietly been probably their second best pass rusher after Greg Rousseau. He is also week to week. And so now a team that was already a little bit thin on defense with losing Milano, losing Phillips, losing Trey White, there's a lot of guys that they're starting to lose. On the other hand, the offense is a full go, and they're up against the Dallas team. Coming off that Philadelphia game on the road, Dak Prescott goes up against a real defense outside the confines of a dome. Do you think the fairy tale ends here for Dak?
I think there's a decent chance. Nasty situational spot. Cowboys getting up for that Eagles game in primetime and having been home for, what was the last time the Cowboys played a road game? October? Like, it feels like they've been home for an eternity.
The thing is they played one against Carolina, but it doesn't count because Carolina are on an NFL team.
Oh,
so
I forgot.
Like a bye week.
Was that in October? That feels like a million years ago. They just have been home for forever. It is going to be fascinating to see if they can adjust to the elements. This is not an easy place to play. This is not an easy time to play there. And if the Cowboys expect to have, precision passing, timing, everything in rhythm, they're going to, if that actually plays out that way, then, hats off to them. But I think there's going to be a little bit of, just a learning curve, adapting to the elements and adapting to the environment for the Cowboys. The Cowboys offensive line has been super unbelievably good, but they haven't had to be in a loud, environment like this with these types of stakes in a really long time. And when they were most recently, I think was probably the game in the Link, where the pass rush for the Eagles was ultimately the deciding factor in that outcome. So there is definitely scope here, I think, for the Bills defense to generate a pass rush and really put pressure on Dak, which could either force him into minus EV plays, just mistakes in general, and or just a little bit of a lack of fluidity, which has been sort of the hallmark of the Cowboys offense these last 3-4 weeks. So definitely would expect the Cowboys to have a tougher time offensively. Now, the question to me seems, or at least betting the Bills or not, and the Bills' injuries on defense, like they've been hurt so aggressively this year, and lots of players have had opportunities to get game time and kind of learn from the mistakes that they've made and losses in the middle of the season. And so I'm not as worried about, AJ or Hyde potentially being unavailable here, because the replacements have gotten some field time, right? But the offense for the Bills is more of a head scratcher for me right now. You have Josh Allen. He is one of the most dynamic, if not the most dynamic pass plus rush force in the NFL, considering he has an absolute howitzer for an arm and he is extremely difficult to tackle. Do they utilize him in the way that he is his best, where you are rolling him out of pocket at times and getting him on the ground for 15 yards, a chunk? That will work against this Cowboys defense. I have very little doubt in that. And I think the Bills offensive line can match up well against the Cowboys pass rush in a way that kind of prevents sort of the game-deciding, game-breaking sacks for the Cowboys defense, which then kind of forces their ability to sustain drives with engaging Cook on the ground. Sorry about that. Engaging Cook on the ground and getting Diggs, matched up against aggressive coverage from, Deron Bland or otherwise. And I think the Diggs question is really where I want to flip this back to you, because I don't exactly understand why he hasn't been super effective the last 4 weeks. It feels like there has been some just general effort by defenses to double key on him in a way that has forced Allen to look at his other options, and those guys just aren't as good at creating separation, aren't as good at the point of the catch. So it's tough for me to say if this is just a factor of the other weapons for the Bills not stepping up in the passing game, or if Diggs specifically is dealing with something that he's not as effective. But if Diggs can't break a couple of relatively significant explosive plays in this one, now we're talking about Bills needing a little bit of luck to get this home, because Cowboys do have outstanding special teams. The Cowboys do create a couple of havoc plays a game in random times in a way that can absolutely flip things, and the Bills have been a propensity for making relative brain farts over the course of a game. So I don't have a strong opinion right now whether 2.5 is a favorable bet in favor of the Bills or not, but I think if you're making a bet on the Bills, you're essentially saying, Cowboys, prove it to me you can get it done on the road in a hostile environment. And then in particular, you're saying I'm betting on the Bills being, a top 5 offense in the NFL, and it just thanks to Josh Allen being present. The other question besides Diggs for you is Sean McDermott feels like he is doing a lot of kind of bottling things, and that may just be who he is now. But the state he's in terms of trying to protect his job and just in general, some of the decision making end of game, it's just not good, and I don't love it, and I worry a little bit that there's a coaching advantage in favor of Mike McCarthy here, So I guess are you worried about Diggs and are you worried about McDermott? Is either one of those enough to kind of either back Cowboys or just walk away from the Bills here?
Yeah, I think with the Bills, I think they're a hyper talented, stupid team, and they just do dumb stuff over and over again. Sean McDermott looks like he's going to burst into tears on the sideline every single game. He looks like a character played at the end. He's like Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of The Aviator, where it's just all kind of gone south, and he's just in the bedroom by himself. It's like,
how did this happen?
Just worrying over and over again. And he butchers these end of game situations constantly. I didn't have as big of a problem with the Kansas City one, because I thought that just with the clock situation, they needed to get another first down. And if they just ran the ball, I didn't think that mattered as much, because KC still had 2 timeouts in the 2-minute. But in these other games, he has mismanaged them violently. And I would not trust him to make a decision that optimizes their chances to win down the end. I don't understand whenever he's playing with a lead, he goes into a shell defense and doesn't play real defense. It's either shell or cover 0 blitzes against the Broncos with no in between. Just play normally, Sean. Just play normally. You don't have to prevent against the touchdown on every single play because they can take multiple plays to score a touchdown. So that's a concern, but that's kind of baked into the Bills at this point. On Diggs, so he turned 30 2 weeks ago. Happy birthday, Stefan. So he might just be getting old. He might just be on the other side. He has fallen off a cliff this past month in particular, ever since the Cincinnati game, where he was one of the best receivers in the game in the first 6 weeks of the season. Yep. Since then, production has fallen off. PFF grades have just fallen off a cliff. He wasn't out there on 3rd downs against the Eagles with the season on the line, and that makes me think that maybe he's just not fully healthy, or there's something that he's nursing. Either way, he's not you used to be able to count on Stephon Diggs as like, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Jamar Chase light. But right now he's like Khalil Shakir, basically. So I don't know what you're getting out of Diggs. The good thing is they have so many other weapons between Kincaid and Davis and Cook and Shakir that I think that they will be okay, even if Diggs isn't at his optimal level. I think it's a good spot for the Cowboys in terms of the weather, as there is no rain and no wind currently forecast in Buffalo. So that, I think, helps the Cowboys a lot. My kind of operating thought behind this game, and it became kind of crystallized a little bit watching Dallas-Philly, where I really needed Dallas to win that game. And Dak just did not fill me with a great deal of confidence. And I don't think he played particularly well in that game. And we talked about, if you want to have a certain theory about Tua and how he is a product of his environment, you could build a somewhat similar case, though not quite the same because Dak has played at a high level. But you could build the case that Dak has been playing indoors against bad defenses for a couple of months now. And the one time he played a properly serious defense in San Francisco, he was like negative 0.4 EPA per play and had the worst game of his career. And now, look, he was super efficient against the Jets, but he had that drop pick 6 and his average depth of target was under 5 yards in that game. So this is a good test for Dak. It's a massive game for MVP with repercussions there. Ultimately, I don't really know what to do with this game, to be honest. I think the line is right. I think these teams are basically dead even, and the Bills' injury situation is a little bit worse, but they have home field. And to your point about, travel, rest, that all favors the Bills. So I think 1.5 to 2 is about right. And I'm not sure there are really any ways into this game. If you really think that the Bills will win, I think you're better off just backing Brock Purdy to win MVP. Because this a loss here would sentence Dak to the 5 seed and the bubble bursts. I don't think Purdy is valued at every price in the market anyway. But yeah, any thoughts on the total before we close out?
Yeah, it's high.
50.5.
It's really high. I don't know that I see that. I know these are two offenses with the pulse. You have two quarterbacks with name brand value. But my fare is about 48 here, so this is under a pass.
Yep. Okay. I like it. All right. We are done. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for those of you watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. And also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll see you soon.